This episode, we are interviewing Ashley Rochelle, a content artist at Gearbox. What led you to becoming a content artist?
So I did drawing and painting for my undergrad degree. And then when I was about to graduate, I was like, what am I gonna do with this? Like, the option was to try to make a bunch of paintings and try to sell them. That didn't sound like fun. Or work in a museum, which I love museums, but I was like, I don't know if that's what I wanna do. Then my mom had actually talked to me in the past about a game school that was actually in the area. I submitted my portfolio to this program. It's called Guildhall is the program, and so I got accepted and learned it's a huge crash course on how to make art for games. After we first started working on our very first team project, because you get to work on multiple game projects. And I just had this moment of, oh my God, this is what I really want to do.
What did your portfolio involve when you were trying to get in as an intern here?
So there's a lot of individual projects where we're told you need to make a scene, or you need to try to make a weapon. And usually we had a lot of direction with that, but we got to pick stuff we made. So it was we had a lot of projects from our time at SMU that was mostly, the program's so quick that that's pretty much what my portfolio was project I had there. I didn't have much time for outside projects because it was a pretty much wake up, go to school, come home, eat dinner, and then work until my fiance at the time, now husband, he would make me go to bed. So it'd be like 2 and he's like, you need to go to bed. I'm like, no, I need to finish. So.
What was the first Gearbox project you worked on? So
the first game I shipped was actually Borderlands 2. A really big and exciting project to be on for the first time. Got to do a lot of really fun stuff. Like I did the new version of the Skag, which I was really excited to get a chance to do. Then I also really liked working on the Tiny Tina DLC, which was it's all about fantasy RPGs, and I love D&D. My husband actually proposed to me during our D&D
Oh
game.
my God!
Yeah, so
I can just imagine.
It was like out of game. It wasn't like in character, so it was really cute. They did a really good job of like everybody was in on it, and it was.
So, what is your greatest challenge when working as a content artist?
It's a balance between a lot of aspects of like an asset. So you're making a single asset that can play into a level a lot of different ways. So it needs to, you need to talk to like the art director to make sure that it fits in the style. You know, he gives you feedback like, hey, does this look good? And he's like, yeah, cool. But then you also need to talk to level designers to make sure it works for what they need. You also have to make sure while you're making it that you're fitting it within optimal performance.
It's expensive in terms of poly count?
Yeah, poly count. They only use one material. So poly count, material, depending on like the complexity of the shader that it's using, how many textures it's using. The rocks are usually pretty low on that end. It's usually like maybe 2 or 3 maps, depending on how complex the collision is. So you have to make sure you're not making it too high poly. You have to make sure that it has collision if it's a static mesh.
Totally.
Yeah, and you have to always make sure that you're just juggling a bunch of different things, and just keeping it all keeping track of it can be kind of tough for me sometimes.
Yeah.
I make a lot of lists. I'm constantly like making a list, like, okay, what do I need to do on this? And then when you get feedback, then you have to go back and possibly revisit some of these things. So and making a balance of, does it fit what everybody needs and everybody wants? And then does it also perform in the game properly? So is it the right scale? Did you export it the right scale?
Yeah.
So it's not the size of a house, that's a rock. Yeah, that's happened. I've imported a welding mask, and it was as big as the Hyperion moon base. But I did that by accident. I don't even know how that happened, but someone sent a screenshot and I remember they replaced the moon with the mask, and they're like, it's perfect. It was really funny.
We could always make an in-game joke about
Yeah. That mask is as big as the moon.
What's your biggest piece of advice for aspiring content artists?
Get really used to learning a bunch of new things and don't get too comfortable with how you do things because it's going to always change. Game technology is always changing, so that's always a big challenge, is learning new programs, getting used to doing that, help develop your thick skin. Don't be afraid of feedback. So there's a lot of wonderful websites like ArtStation, Polycount, where you can post things.
Totally.
Yeah, you can post your art that you're working on, get feedback, and getting used to people giving you feedback and then iterating and reworking stuff and just getting used to that workflow, because that's a big part of the job, is not being afraid of, hey, I gotta take this to the art lead or the director and he needs to tell me, does he like it or not? He may not like it, and you have to get, not get too caught up or married. We call it, don't get too married to what you're working on, because it's probably gonna change.
Yeah.
It might get thrown out. That's another thing. I've had plenty of things get completely thrown out, or I had to completely rework it from the ground up. So it's a big part of the job. It doesn't mean you're a bad artist. As an artist, you always want to be comfortable with learning and learning from your mistakes. So
What's it like texturing 3D models?
there are so many ways you can do it. So when I first started, it was you modeled it, then you unwrapped it in 3ds Max or Maya, whichever one, or XSI, or whichever program you're using. Then you'd have the layout, and then you'd hand do it in Photoshop. As I learned more and more, then you start baking out maps. So you start baking out your AO, you bake out some for like cavity maps and concave maps. So it's it's a lot. When you're making any asset for Borderlands 2, all of those ink lines are hand drawn. Those are hand drawn in Photoshop, and we have Photoshop brushes we use that are it's just a hard, thick line that you draw that has pen pressure, and everything is hand done. So, like I have this, this is the texture for the skag for Borderlands 2. It has all of these ink lines I painted by hand. And there's a bunch of even some white lines and some highlights. Those are also done by hand. So this is not done with a shader. This is, each individual artist had to spend the time and draw over the texture that they baked out.
What does your day-to-day job entail?
For me, when I come into the office, my first thing I do is I go to my desk. We use a program for our version software to make sure that we're not, everything's like the latest version, so we don't accidentally like work on something that somebody else had already worked on and we don't lose work. So I always update that, so I get the latest of everything. Then I check my email and I check my task list. We have a program we use for listing out tasks that you have to do. And I double check to see, has anybody updated anything or responded to anything I've said? And from there, I just look at they're always list them in priority. So I look at what's the most important thing I need to work on right now, start working on it. I may or may not have to go talk to somebody. There's, depending on what I'm working on, sometimes I have to go talk to a level designer, say I'm working on like a jump pad. Like that's something that's very important, that it is a specific size and shape that the designer needs. So if it's a gameplay related thing, I usually have to go back and forth and talk with them. Or if it's something related for a character, sometimes I have to talk to a character artist or the character designers. There's a lot of back and forth there. Usually if it's like as a rock, I usually just make a thing and then post a screenshot, and then people say, I like it or not. And each part of the process, each step, I post a screenshot so they can look at it before I move on. So that's a good way to at least try to prevent rework.
What computer programs do you use the most?
The main ones I use 3ds Max for my 3D modeling. Then I also use ZBrush for a lot of that organic sculpting. And then I also use Photoshop a lot. So those are my big three. Those big three. I have a lot of other programs I use for baking maps.
Do you have to alter your art style in order to fit the theme of the game you're currently working on? If so, how is that difficult?
So, so far the games I've worked on, mainly Borderlands and Battleborn are the two big ones I've done. Art style for those are pretty different. Actually Borderlands wasn't too far off from my senior project, which was really kind of funny. I did a lot of watercolor and ink stuff.
Nice.
So when I was told, oh, you're gonna be working on Borderlands 2, I was like, oh, okay, I can start working on practicing that art style. But so far every project I've worked on, it's not necessarily the art style like if I was at home. And so usually there's a lot of learning involved, a lot of looking at previous work that other people have done that's in the style that the art director approves of, and then using that for reference. But what's funny is we like to joke about Borderlands 2 assets, where if you're just looking at it as a general consumer, you can't really tell the difference, but all of us, all of the artists, we can tell who made what.
Really?
Yeah, because everybody still has their own little flair they do. So it's just really kind of fun. But I think the difficulty just comes with making sure you're hitting the style, and you're like, that's like our job is to make sure everything fits together. And it's just, yeah, so it's just like the back and forth and the getting the feedback. Yeah, so the cool thing about these guys is when we're making these, we want to make them different from each angle. So this, it looks like this on this side, and then you go to this other side, completely different. Also from the top, the bottom, the side, all the sides are different. And this way, a level designer or a level artist can come in and they can just cram them together and in any angle or direction, and they can just make formations with them.
What do you feel is an overlooked or underrated job in the industry?
So I kind of feel like a lot of people don't realize just how many people it takes to make a game. So you have like an artist who makes that really awesome rock set that makes up like half the level. And then you have a level designer who, you know, designs the layout, like the exact layout for that multiplayer map that you know, people spend hours and hours on. I mean, tech artists, they make tools to help us make our jobs easier.
Wow,
Yeah, like,
exactly.
you know, I mean, you don't really hear about these kind of guys too much. You know, animators, they make awesome taunts that everybody loves. And
exactly.
so I kind of feel like it's the content creators, the people who actually like are, you know, we get the task, hey, make that tree. Because you don't really see too many people like that actually like out and about in the public. So it's a lot of the people that I kind of think just, they don't know we're here. So.
And last but not least, what's your favorite video game?
So Final Fantasy series is kind of, I will always cherish a lot of those games. But probably my favorite, I keep talking about it, is the Metal Gear Solid series. Namely number 3. Yeah, I'm a big fan of all of those games, so.
Thank you so much for doing the interview with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
For more information on Behind the Beta and other current projects I'm working on, go to inkrosinc.com. Our next episode will feature Kate Edwards, the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association. You can help support Behind the Beta on Patreon, link in the description.